welcome to LitChats. My name is Amber Peterson, and I'm the Chief Program Officer for LitWorld. LitWorld partners with amazing community-based organizations all around the world to strengthen kids and communities through the power of story. In 2010, LitWorld began World Read Aloud Day, an opportunity to celebrate the phenomenal power of reading aloud and oral storytelling. And since then, World Read Aloud Day has become a global movement, engaging millions of readers, writers, and listeners each year from communities all around the world. This year, World Read Aloud Day falls on February 5th, 2025, and it's an extra special one because it marks World Read Aloud Day's 15th anniversary. We're so excited. We've got big things planned. We're counting down. Reading aloud isn't only one of the most powerful and accessible ways of building healthy literacy skills and habits. It's also an incredible tool for building community. And that's what we're talking about on our Lit Chat today. And to bring in unique perspective on this conversation, I'm so honored to be joined by Dr. Monica Burns.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Monica is an edtech and curriculum consultant and author who shares a lot of tips for educators at classtechtips.com. Mm-hmm. She's also a longtime LitWorld friend and collaborator. Welcome, Monica.
Thank you so much for the invitation to come on and chat about World Read Aloud Day and kind of all the things when we talk about communities.
Absolutely. I'm so happy that you're here with us. It's been a while since we worked together. I think our last LitWorld project was Story 21, which was back in 2015, which a billion years ago, I think.
Oh my gosh. 10 years, I guess, right? Almost. My goodness.
Terrifying to think of. But it's so nice to talk to you now, especially about this topic of creating community, because your background is so rooted in technology and digital access. And so much of the community we create around World Read Aloud Day is actually online. LitWorld has always embraced technology as a tool for creating community, as our work is international. So many of our relationships with our partner communities across the world have been forged through computer screens. So this idea of digital community has never been foreign to us. But for a lot of folks, I think the pandemic forced a really big shift in the way that people interact. Suddenly, for a lot of us, a lot of our relationships are primarily digital. A lot of us haven't transitioned fully back from work from home or from remote learning. Social media is a huge presence in our lives now. I read something that like 60% of the global community is on social media now. We spend an average of like 2.5 hours a day on it. So it's a lot. So as someone who studies these digital spaces and technical spaces, what do you think this shift changes for how people communicate and create community?
Well, so much has changed, like you mentioned, in terms of ways we can leverage digital spaces to build community. And there's a few different ways to consider what this might look like in action for anyone who's listening today, right? Sometimes digital communities are extensions of face-to-face interactions that we have. It's a way to continue conversations, to stay connected with a group you might see face-to-face with some level of frequency, but maybe not as much as you want to. So for example, there may be digital communities that are extensions of a meetup or a monthly gathering, and it fills in the time between the two, maybe for some logistical things like when are we going to meet next or where do we go, but also to keep the conversation going that started in one gathering and then will be picked up face to face in that next gathering. There's also digital communities that have sprouted because someone did not have someone to meet with face to face. They were craving connection around a shared topic, around a shared interest, and they went to online spaces to find other people, right, who are interested in something. And maybe that will move into a face-to-face event at some point. I know for many of the conferences conferences I attend in the ed tech space, there are people who I will see on an escalator or run into on a conference floor who I first connected with on a social media platform, right? And now we're extending, right, that experience into face to face. And then there's other spaces where you may not ever, sit in the same room with that person, but you're staying connected with them in digital spots. So there's definitely benefits when we leverage these digital spaces strategically, right, to foster community.
Absolutely. And I think what you said is kind of key. I think our that traditional definition of community relies on this idea of physical proximity to someone.
Mhm.
But in a digital space, that physical proximity may or may not be be a reality.
Right.
It opens up so many doors for how we connect with people and what that connection looks like.
Yeah, I think for so many people, right, there's different ways to think about, right, what it looks like to connect with someone else who's online. And just like any type of interaction you might have, right, you want to be strategic, right, with how you're fostering that connection. And when that's done in a way that's really purposeful, right, it can help someone who might feel isolated, right, build a community. It's not a replacement for all of the wonderful face to face connections that we have over the course of the day, but it may align with other goals, right? Especially if you can't find someone to connect with over a shared passion or interest, or you want to extend, right, a conversation beyond just that initial face to face.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. A lot of the folks who engage with Lit World around the world are educators.
Mhm.
And I think for teachers in particular, and I say this as a former teacher myself,
Mhm.
that push to create and maintain digital communities for students um, feels both incredibly necessary and also
Mhm.
scary at the same time. First of all, we're all learning how to navigate these spaces at the same time as our students. So
Mhm.
that's scary. And sometimes they're more adept at them than we are. So yay. Um,
Mhm.
also, again, that understanding of that definition of community that relies on us being able to connect with people face to face is so prevalent that how do we start to shift our perspective on what that looks like for our classrooms, for our teaching. What advice do you have for educators who are being asked to embrace these digital learning digital spaces and maybe feel ill-equipped or reluctant to do so?
Yeah, I mean, anytime we start something new, particularly when we feel maybe like low confidence or that we don't quite have the capacity we wish we had in understanding what's possible, right? And this is true in digital spaces as well, right? It can be intimidating. And I think that is a natural, perfectly valid, right? Big feeling to have about entering into a space where you might begin to manage a community of learners, right, in a digital space, whether you spend most of the day face to face with them and it's an extension, or perhaps you're facilitating an online learning, situation where it's the primary mode of students sharing and interacting with one another. So one thing that I would suggest to an educator who's feeling understandably, intimidated about a shift in this way is to really lean into the platforms that have been chosen by your organization. It can be really tempting when we're in the ed tech spaces to see something bright and new and shiny, but if something's already being used and there is a built-in community to support you, that meaning, right, their whole grade level is using this, the whole school is using this platform, even if it's not perfect, right, it's a lot better to be in a space where you have some built-in support for troubleshooting, for asking questions, than to be in a space that looks like it's perfect on paper, right, but might not actually be in practice. And then you don't have a community to talk to about how to really leverage that particular tool. I would also lean into some of the not quite community, but perhaps collaboration features that are built into digital tools you're already using that can help build some of those conversations that extend into more kind of traditional community or online spaces. So, for example, if you're using collaborative documents like a Google Doc, right? You might right now use that primarily one way or two way, right? Student to teacher, teacher to student. And you might decide that you are slowly opening up more student to student interactions in that space, which requires some intention, right? You need to intentionally introduce how to comment, right? What kind of comments are strong and positive and helpful, and which ones are either not helpful, like a smiley face is nice, but it's better if it's paired with that actual, right, sentence or voice recording, or ones that are just not appropriate, right, for that space, right, in terms of interacting. So that means that we're thinking aloud as we're modeling. We're sharing great examples. We're sharing counter examples that are not so great that might spark a discussion to really prepare students to interact in these spaces. So there's a level of choosing your space. And then there's that intention of planning how to introduce, how to model, how to think aloud, like we might for a read aloud, and model different skills and strategies that we want students to put into practice as they are building community right in their classroom.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you pointed out that collaboration and community don't necessarily equal the same thing.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of times we see tools that have collaboration, um, you know, abilities, and we think,
Right.
oh, this is how we create community. We have a community because you can comment, and you're absolutely right. There's so much intention that needs to be behind
Mhm.
creating community. The collaboration tools are just that, they're tools.
Yes. Mhm. Exactly.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much. I mean, I guess same question, but now let's think about this from a parent's perspective.
Yeah.
And I think that there's, so many wonderful things that can happen in online spaces. But then it's also a huge wide space. So it can be very scary. So how can a parents help embrace digital literacy as a family?
Mhm.
And B, help their children safely and positively engage in digital communities.
Yeah. So, one big thing is thinking about how you're using digital tools to extend your own familial, right, or close friend community. So, that might mean that you are coming together for a group FaceTime, right, where it's your group and it's another small group, right, and you are talking together. Maybe that's a grandparent that you're reading a book with, right, at the same time. Maybe you're using video to catch up, right, with another family that lives far away. And that joint media engagement, right, of consuming content perhaps together, right, even if you are at a distance, right, is definitely a strategy for helping children see how to leverage tools, right, in not just a passive way, but in a very active way, right? If they're participating with someone else who might be live, right? You might also, as a parent, right, decide that you want to invite your children into spaces where you are the primary interactor and you're sharing like what your thought process is. Like you might say, you know what, I was in a Facebook group, right, to get some great book recommendations, and I saw someone post this great idea that made me think of this. Or you
Mhm.
might share, I was in our neighborhood group and someone said something that wasn't very kind to someone else. And, that really makes me feel this way when I read that comment. And you're just adding in a level of transparency into your own interactions where you're naming things, you're pointing things out. They're not all bad examples. Some of them are great examples. And so you're sharing the different ways that you interact in online spaces, your purpose of being in those spaces, maybe to learn or to gather ideas, right? And then you are transparent, right, on what that experience feels like for you, right, as an adult in those spaces. So those are just two things I would recommend to families is one, think about the way you're engaging with media together, particularly with people who might be far away. Doing that live is fantastic, but it might even be exchanging quick videos that you record together or audio messages, right, in a chat together and playing them back and forth. And then the second piece is having a level of transparency for how you interact, how you feel when you see different interactions, and examples of interactions that you come across when you are in digital spaces.
Oh, I love that. Uh, that first one, simply because I'm realizing that I have a nephew,
Mhm.
a very young nephew who lives across the country from me, and that is our entire relationship. And I'm just realizing
Right.
it's completely digital. Uh,
Yeah.
and it's a rich relationship that we're able to cultivate because we've been, um,
Mhm.
investing in that form of communication. Uh,
Exactly.
I think to your second point, so much of what you're saying is basically how we introduce children to every aspect of
Mhm.
the world, by being transparent, by explaining that there's good and bad, positive, negative. And I think it's you know technology, social media, these digital spaces are a reality for us now, and so it is on us to make sure that we're introducing our young people uh, to those spaces in ways that make sense for us. So
Absolutely.
thank you. So as I mentioned at the very beginning, part of the power of reading aloud lies in its ability to create community. By its very nature, you're sharing an experience around storytelling, and there's something very primal and very fundamental in the
Mhm.
community that type of experience can create. Since 2010, and especially since 2020, so much of the community that we create for World Read Aloud Day is online. People are sharing about and advocating for reading aloud on social media. Um, a lot of authors, a lot of storytellers take the opportunity to share online their stories on that day. There's so many resources that we promote, Lit World promotes on our websites, how people share their stories on World Read Aloud Day, including the Build a Story Challenge, where we ask people to upload their own stories and read them on World Read Aloud Day. Are there any tools or resources or actions that you recommend to help people embrace this act of reading aloud and the community it can create online for World Read Aloud Day, or just in general?
So there's so many great creative tools out there that are available in schools and that are available for families to try out, for free. And, it's an opportunity in a quick, short way, maybe a 30-second video or one page of an ebook to capture a storytelling experience, to share a favorite book, right? To do something where you're taking your own experience as a reader and letting other people know about it. So, kind of having an audience, right, for your reading experiences. One that I love that you could access both in a K-12 EDU setting as well as in a family setting is Adobe Express and their Animate with Audio feature. I've done some work for the education team, so I'm a super fan of those tools. But one thing I love about it is you can choose a little character, a little avatar. You're not on camera yourself, right? You choose the background or even upload an illustration that you've made, and then you record your voice and that little character talks alongside your voice. It's a great way to do a 30-second reading recommendation, right? I read this great book. Here's why I love it. If you love this, I think you'll like it too, right? And there's your kind of fill in the blank, right? Reading response that you could then post and share. And maybe you make that video as a family and you send it to another family member, right? Or you share it with your child's teacher, right? Or if you're in a classroom environment, maybe this is the first time, right? You use this creative tool. I love doing, first timer intro for new tools for favorite things. So this is a perfect way to put two and two together, like that reading recommendation. And then as a teacher, you might come back to that tool later in the year for a science project, right? So like there's so many ways to use this as a starting place for creativity that can accomplish a lot of goals, right, over the course of the school year.
I love that. I love that. I'm already planning on doing something like that with my nephew. That sounds like so fun.
Mhm.
I love that. Thank you so much, Dr. Monica Burns, for joining
Mhm.
me here today for a lit chat. It is always a pleasure to speak with you. If you are tuning in, please head over to classtechtips.com for amazing tools, resources, and insights for educators. Before we go, can you let us know how you'll be celebrating World Read Aloud Day on February 5th?
So my niece and I are very close. I know you mentioned your nephew, and she is an excited, very young reader. So when you visit her, she pulls the book off her bookshelf, right, and is just ready to show you whatever's new. And so I'm excited to celebrate World Read Aloud Day with her. We live not too far away, so it'll probably be a walk around the corner to see them this World Read Aloud Day.
Oh, I love that. Yay, nibblings. We love
Yeah.
them.
Mhm.
Thank you once again for joining me, Monica. And thank you, everyone who is tuning in. Please check out worldreadaloudday.org for incredible resources to celebrate the 15th anniversary of World Read Aloud Day on February 5th, 2025. Register to become a Radvocate and help us to amplify the importance of this day and this important act. Follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and throughout January for activities, celebration resources, and more amazing conversations just like this one. Thank you so much, and happy countdown to World Read Aloud Day, everyone. Bye.